So you're new to Genshin, you do a 10 pull on the current banner, and while you don't get a 5-star, you do get 4-star Kuki Shinobu. Now what do you get with Kuki besides the only reason that Itto is not in jail? Well, Kuki is a sword-wielding Electro user, and she is probably the best example in Genshin of how a character can go from being like a B tier damage-wise up to S tier virtually overnight. And in this beginner guide, we're going to go over everything that you need to know to play Kuki as a beginner or as a person that is new to the character of Kuki. Hi, I'm Kessie, or Mango, or whatever the hell you want to call me. And because not everyone is AR60, 36-star Abyss, I try to make videos that anyone can watch and understand. So with that being said, let's get into Kuki's guide. Okay, so just like every other beginner guide, I'm going to show you my current build on Kuki. So if you do not see the same numbers in your game, you can kind of know why. So Kuki is my second favorite character in all of Genshin. So I do have her level 90. I do have her skill crowned, which if you don't know what that means, it means maxed out. I am running one of her best in-slot artifact sets. I am running an R5 level 90 Iron Sting, which we'll talk more about Iron Sting whenever we get further into the video. And she is C1. I just got her to C1. Kuki was, I think, the second character I ever pulled in Genshin when I was like AR10, which can be a bad thing. And we'll also talk about that later. So Kuki does 4 hits for her normal attack. 1, 2, 3, and then 4. And she does do that kind of like jump up and throw knives at the enemy. It's actually kind of cool. So 1, 2, 3, and then 4. Let me get out of here so that way you can see it a little bit better. Let's go to these guys. Or let's just let him get up here. So 1, 2, 3, and then 4. Her charge attacks are going to do, it says 2 hits, but it's kind of a barrage on the last one, like other sword users. So 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. So you'll have 1 and then the kind of barrage. And now we're going to talk about her skill. So her skill will sacrifice some of her own HP to put up an electric ring around her. Now this ring does heal and does do an electro pulse every 1.5 seconds. So you see it is healing her when it pulses. The healing scales off of her max HP, but the damage does not.
Looking for a fight?
So Kuki is also an off-field electro applicator. So if you use her skill and then swap to somebody else, the electric ring stays and it now heals your on-field character. So the HP cut from her skill will never take Kuki below 20% HP. So you don't really have to worry about her like killing herself with it. So now we're going to talk about her burst. And her burst is going to summon this kind of AoE field that's going to do electro damage to anything inside of that field. Now, I am C1, which means that my field will be bigger than the normal field. And this does damage based on Kuki's max HP. So she is normally an HP character, where that's kind of the stat that you want to focus on. So whenever you're using her skill, if you are going to use her for an off-field healer as well as electro applicator, you do sometimes have to worry about her HP getting really, really low because she's never receiving the healing back. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you just have to be careful on when you switch her in, because if you do get her HP low and then you switch her in, she could just be killed in one hit because her HP is so low. So now we're going to talk about artifacts. Now, everything that I said in the skill and burst doesn't really imply, it tells you that Kuki is supposed to be an HP built character. She does healing based on HP, her burst damage is done based on HP. But we're going to talk about 2 builds in this guide. And the first one is going to be the more standard, easier to do, especially as a newer player, HP damage, healer damage hybrid build that you can do with Kuki. The second one that we're going to talk about is going to be a Hyper Bloom build. And you can do that with some of the free characters that you get in Genshin. But first we're going to talk about the more standard HP build. And on the kind of HP standard build for a beginner, you're not really going to be using a 4-piece set, at least in my opinion. You're going to be using a 2-piece and a 2-piece. We're going to talk about different 2-pieces. So for example, the Adventurer set gets your max HP up by 1,000. And as a beginner, your options of increasing your HP are very limited. So that could be a good 2-piece. Exile set could be a good 2-piece. If you want to use her burst with you building HP, that can be good. And if you want to increase Kuki's personal damage, then doing a 2-piece Gambler set can be really good because it increases your skill damage by 20%. And you're going to be using Kuki's skill a lot. You don't really want the 4-piece because by the time Kuki's skill has ended, it's basically time to use it again. There isn't really much of a cooldown. There's like a couple seconds. And then you also have the option of like a 2-piece instructor set. Now we're going to talk more about the instructor set whenever we talk about the Hyper Bloom or Elemental Mastery build Kuki. So as far as a 3-star weapon goes, Cool Steel isn't a bad one. You do get attack percent, which will just help increase her damage overall. But it does give a bonus for damage against opponents affected by Hydro, which Kuki does do well with Hydro characters. Another good one can be Skyrider Sword just because of energy recharge. Again, that is going to be if you are trying to use her burst for your main source of damage on Kuki. So I would say something like Harbinger of Dawn for crit damage, again, getting her personal damage up, but you're not going to have her HP above 90%. So that's, again, not really a good one. But there is one weapon that, in my opinion, is better than all of those, and that is going to be Iron Sting. Now, Iron Sting is a 4-star, but it is a 4-star craftable weapon. And you can craft it at any blacksmith, and you craft it with materials that you get from your weekly boss drops, like Duvalin or Razor's Dad, or any of those. So you can make Iron Sting, which will get up your attack, and your Elemental Mastery. But this is going to be Kuki's best free-to-play weapon, in my opinion, even if you're going to be running her as a non-Hyper Bloom, as a non-EM build, you still want that Elemental Mastery for causing the reactions, because that's what Kuki excels at, is causing reactions. So in this build, Kuki is much more of a support character. She's not going to be doing a ton of damage. She's going to be healing your other characters that are on the field, and she's going to be applying Electro, right? And while this build is fine, and it was really the only way to build Kuki, when Sumeru came out and Dendro got released, Kuki went from being a B tier character to an S tier damage dealer. And the reason for that is Aggravate and Hyper Bloom. And we're going to specifically talk about Hyper Bloom in this video. Now, Hyper Bloom, you want as much Elemental Mastery as you can get. Iron Sting is a phenomenal way to get Elemental Mastery. And for artifacts, the Instructor set is going to be a 4-piece set that you want to use because it gives you 80 Elemental Mastery, but upon triggering an elemental reaction, it increases all party members' Elemental Mastery by 120, which will be phenomenal for Kuki. That gives you 200 EM right there automatically. And you can get Elemental Mastery as a main stat on Sands, Goblet, and Circlet. So to any higher AR players that watch this, don't give me grief about my 4-star Circlet on Kuki. I have been trying for so long to get a 5-star, okay? Just don't even mention it. And then, of course, on your flower and your plume, look for Elemental Mastery in the substats. That'll also get your Elemental Mastery up. You want to put as much Elemental Mastery on Kuki as you can. So this is going to be a very, very beginner-friendly party. I would, if you do have a second Hydro, I would use that instead of an Anemo early on. You do get Lynette for free at AR 25, Barbara for free whenever you finish the Anemo Archon quest, and Calais for free whenever you clear floor 4 of the Abyss. So that's why I'm saying this is a very beginner-friendly party, because you can get these 3 characters guaranteed for free. And Calais was on the last banner, so if you did some pulls there, you might already have her without having to clear the Abyss. So first we're going to talk about the standard build. We're not going to use Dendro yet. We're just going to be using Hydro and Electro and Animo. So if we get some Electro going and go to Barbara, we're going to be causing an Electro Charge reaction. It is going to pass around the electricity. Now you notice I am also doing off-field Electro with Kuki's skill. And when it's up, I just swap back, go back to Barbara, and keep up the Electro Charge. Now you see it's hitting about 8,600 with the Electro Charge. That is because of all of the elemental mastery that I have on Kuki. Barbara is also pretty good to kind of mix in there because Kuki is not getting the healing from her skill right now because she's not on the field. And if she does get too low, I can just use Barbara's burst and it just heals the whole party. So I'm not really worried about Kuki having low HP. Then we can swap in Lynette, get some swirls going, hopefully pick up. Awesome, it picked up Hydro, so now it's spreading around the Hydro. Kuki's just doing more Electro Charge damage using her burst. That is how you can use just these three characters to spread around this reaction and do pretty good damage. And now we're going to bring into play the Hyper Bloom reaction. Now, I am 100% a believer that bloom reactions are not exactly beginner friendly. They take more coordination, they take more elements, but if you can do it, it is so worth it with Kuki. It is easily Kuki's best build is to go EM. So, to get Hyper Bloom, we first have to create blooms. So we're going to get Kale, who will throw her boomerang and do some off-field Dendro whenever we swap, and we're going to create these things. Well, that thing right there. That is a bloom. Now, on its own, it will explode. But if you introduce Electro to it, it will basically become a homing missile. So we're going to make some more blooms. And we're going to set up Electro. And you see right there, it just did a homing action to the nearest character, or the character that it wanted to target. Just like that. We're going to go back to Kale, apply some more Dendro, make another bloom, hit it, and boom. It will find the enemy for you. So right now, we have Kuki doing off-field Electro, Kale doing some off-field Dendro with her Ascensions and her Boomerang, and then Barbara applying enough Hydro to continuously create blooms for Kuki's skill to then trigger the Hyper Bloom. Now, why do you want to stack Elemental Mastery on Kuki? Because Hyper Bloom, it only calculates level of the character triggering the Hyper Bloom, so that would be Kuki, and Elemental Mastery of the character triggering the Hyper Bloom, so that would be Kuki. Those are the only two things that will increase Hyper Bloom damage this early in the game. I'm going to choose my words carefully because there is another way to increase damage, which I have on my Kale. But that's for another video. So I did want to take a minute and talk about the downside to Kuki. And the downside is that she is from Inazuma. So just like every other character from Inazuma, her material and or boss drop is locked behind Inazuma's Archon quest. You have to get to Inazuma first. And to get to Inazuma, you have to have finished Liwei's Archon quest. You can't just walk there like you can to Sumeru. That is the downside. However, I do think that if you can get her to level 40 and stack EM on her, she can still do really good damage early in the game. And that is going to be it for the beginner guide to Kuki Shinobu. So if you did learn something, I'd really appreciate it if you liked the video, commented, subscribed, all of that fun stuff. So do check out TikTok. I do make shorter versions of these videos. And I also have a Discord link down in the description. If you want to join the community, have fun, hang out, play co-op, ask questions, any of that fun stuff, we would love to help you out. So I'll see you in the next video.